Revenge films.
My name is Sarah Smith. Ever since my father-in-law passed away, I've been living with my husband, Thomas Smith, and his mother. We've been living with my mother-in-law for about 6 months now. Unfortunately, my husband and I were struggling to have children of our own. At this point, we were about to go into our 4th year of marriage, and I was starting to sweat it. It was right around that time that I also started to have some concerns about living with Thomas's mother. Until we lived together, I got along well with my mother-in-law, and there weren't any problems between us. However, as soon as we started living together, a certain problem became very clear. My husband had told me that ever since he was a little kid, my mother had prone to having tantrums of her own, and he had told me that he grew up getting hit by her quite a lot. It would be one thing if that had ended when Thomas grew up, but recently she started hitting me over the smallest things. One day when I was in the kitchen as usual cooking dinner for all of us, I was about to put soy sauce into the stew that I was making. But then suddenly, out of nowhere, my mother-in-law got angry. "Hey, Sarah, what are you doing? If you put that much soy sauce in, it's gonna be way too much of a flavor." "I'm so sorry," as I tried to apologize to her, but before I could finish my sentence, my mother-in-law slapped my hand that I was holding the soy sauce in. "Ouch, that hurts!" "Come on, you need to be more careful. Do you understand that thing? The flavoring is all about it. Don't overdo it." Even when I was cooking, and even if I would be holding a knife in my hands and cutting something, if there was something that bothered her, she would pay no mind to the knife in my hands, saying, "That's not how you do it," and slap me. I was shocked that she would hit me when I was holding a knife because that's so dangerous, and yet my mother-in-law didn't seem like she felt any sort of guilt about it whatsoever, and I became terrified of her. If I would be doing the chores around the house and she didn't like the way that I was doing it, she would say, "That's incorrect." And even if I was sitting down, she would push me on the shoulders by trying to get me down. These actions of hers started to escalate as a result. Eventually, the incident happened. It happened one day when I was upstairs on the 2nd floor of the cleaning, when suddenly my mother-in-law stormed up the stairs with an angry look on her face. Hey, what are you doing? I wanted to use the vacuum, so why would you come and bring it to the 2nd floor? Give it to me right now." At the top of the stairs, my mother-in-law was trying to force me into physical altercation, and she was pulling the vacuum and trying to wrestle it out of my hands. "Mrs. Smith, please, it's dangerous. Please stop that." At that very moment, my foot slipped off the top of the stairs, and I fell down this entire set of stairs. I hit my hip heavily on the ground, and I was unable to move from the spot. Ouch, ouch. When my mother-in-law saw me in so much pain, instead of apologizing, she continued to shout at me from the top of the stairs. "How dangerous! What the hell are you doing, you klutz? You need to be more careful, my goodness!" At the very moment, I felt inside of me that everything that I had been tolerating up until now had boiled over. Thankfully, although I hit my hip hard on the ground, I didn't have any major injuries, and I was able to eventually walk and go back to my regular life. However, it was all because my mother-in-law that I couldn't forgive her for the way she handled the situation afterwards either. And so, that was what I decided from now on. I was going to do exactly what my mother-in-law did to me, right back at her. One day, when I was in the kitchen, cooking as usual, my mother-in-law stormed over to me and slapped my hand. "That's not how you do it at all. You don't need to be putting so much soy sauce that you should be using this." "No, stop that!" This time, I slapped my mother-in-law in the hand and grabbed the seasoning from her. "Ouch, what do you think you're doing? Stop getting in the way of my cooking and leave me alone." This time, I started chopping the vegetables despite the fact that I was holding a sharp knife in my hand. My mother-in-law tried to come hit me once again. "You can't gut the vegetables so roughly this way." "Please stop that. It's dangerous. I'm holding a knife." I firmly raised my voice, and without thinking, I stepped on my mother-in-law's foot. However, I didn't apologize and proceeded to ignore her. And then my mother-in-law fell on the ground and was obviously trying to put on an act like it hurt. And so, that's why I purposely put on an act, rubbing my hips that I injured and fell down the stairs crying about it. That's how I responded. My mother-in-law was no longer able to say anything, and she stormed out of the kitchen. On top of that, one day, when I was trying to iron the clothes, I felt her come up behind me, and I knew that she was going to try to push me. So instead, I stood my ground, turned around, and glared right into her eyes. And then, as though I was lecturing a young child, I spoke very slowly and neatly to her. "Do you know how hot an iron is? If you touch it, you're gonna get a burn, okay? So please, while I'm ironing clothes, it's very dangerous, so don't push me." "How dare you make fun of me like this?" "You're in the way, so please move." This time, I pushed my mother-in-law's back, but not strong enough that she would fall over. She dramatically raised her voice, and then ran away from the living room. After that, whenever I would be watching TV, my mother-in-law would grab the remote and purposely blast the volume. Or, if she knew that I was in the bath, she would turn off all the lights, and she started harassing me. Every single time that she'd do that to me, I would do something similar right back at her, and eventually my mother-in-law started to show her frustration on the surface. But when I thought about the stress that I carried until now, just holding it in, I could only feel like this was appropriate treatment for her. So I continued to do exactly what she did to me right back at her. And in all kinds of ways, I continued over the course of weeks to get back at her. A few weeks later, perhaps she had reached her limit of her patience, and finally, my mother-in-law went crying to my husband about it.
"I'm home."
"Thomas, you have to help me. Your wife is abusing me. She keeps hitting me. At this rate, I'm gonna get hurt. My body can't take it anymore."
"Huh? Is this real?"
"Thomas, all I was doing wrong was what exactly your mother was doing to me, right back at her. You're the one who always raises your hand and hits me first, Mrs. Smith."
"What are you saying? I never hit you ever. Your wife is the only one that suddenly started hitting me out of nowhere."
My mother-in-law tried to deny anything and say that she hadn't raised a finger towards me. But because my husband grew up getting hit by her ever since she was a child, he didn't believe her for a second.
"I bet you were the one who was throwing a tantrum, and you hit Sarah, didn't you, Mom? Just like you did to me when I was a little kid." Just be honest and acknowledge it!
Are you really gonna take her side of your stupid wife over the one and only mother?
You have always been a liar as long as I've known you, Mom! But Sarah has never once lied to me. That's why I'm going to believe what Sarah says.
What the hell? All I did was hit her just a little bit. When my mother-in-law said that, she realized that she had let it slip. She put her hand over her mouth immediately.
See? I knew it! So you did hit her! I can't believe that you would hit my wife! You're the worst! How can we ever live in this house with you, knowing that that's how you treat her?
My husband was furious, and this time my mother-in-law said the most outrageous thing.
Your wife can't even make children. She's worthless and useless. So what's wrong with hitting her?
What did you just say? So what if she can't make children? I can't forgive you for what you just said! Apologize to Sarah right now!
Well, if you're stressed out, it makes it even more difficult to have children. I indirectly blame my mother-in-law for the reasons why we weren't able to have children, and that was when my husband declared that we weren't going to live with her anymore. This time, my mother-in-law lost it, and she said, "Fine, do whatever you want." And after that, she stormed out of the room. After that, my mother-in-law remained furious, and even though we were still living in the same house, she refused to talk to me. But as time went on, we were able to find a great apartment, and the two of us rented a new place and moved out. Once I was free of living with my mother-in-law, perhaps I was able to let go of a lot of stress. Because 3 months after we moved out, I discovered that I was pregnant. When I told my husband that we were finally pregnant, he cried tears of happiness. But then there was one other person who had been waiting all this time to give birth. When my mother-in-law found out that I was pregnant, even though she was so furious with me before, suddenly she tried sucking up to me. And then, without any apology of an acknowledgement of the past, she started saying that we were going to live together again. I was so stunned that I didn't even have words to respond. When my husband refused to live with her, my mother-in-law lost her temper and threw a tantrum over the phone. That's why we decided not to answer the phone for a while, even though she kept calling over and over again. Not long after that, I entered my second trimester, and we were feeling relieved about the pregnancy, and suddenly one day my mother-in-law showed up at the door. My husband happened to be off work that day, so I had him go into the door, and as soon as he did, my mother pushed her way into our apartment.
Hey, you can't just show up here like that! And you can't just barge into our apartment!
What are you talking about? Starting today, I'm going to be living here. It's decided. What?
I don't know what you're talking about. We never discussed this.
Well, too bad, because I already put up the family house for sale.
You're joking, right? Why would you do that without talking to me about it first? You're telling me that you sold the house where we had all of our memories with Dad? What the hell have you done?
If I have to live in such a house by myself, then obviously it's much better for me to live with you. Come on, now hurry up and carry all my things inside.
Are you kidding me? There's no way that we were ever going to live together with you! Now hurry up and get out!
My husband was completely furious, and he told his mother that he was going to cut all ties with her and try to kick her out. As she was crying and begging at the door, once she was outside, he locked the door in her face. Because my mother-in-law had already sold the family house, she had nowhere else left to go, and she kept trying to call my husband on the phone countless times. Eventually, my husband lost his patience and blocked her. From that day forward, we never once had a contact with his mother ever again. After that, Thomas's mother was stuck having to sleep in cafes until she could find a new place to live. And then she eventually found an old apartment for her to live by herself. She was going to be spending her retirement alone. As for me, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and I'm living a happy life with my family of 3. The more time goes by, I've started to think that maybe I could forgive my mother-in-law, but my husband says that he never wanted to get involved with her ever again. And so, I just wanted to build a warm, stress-free household with my husband for a daughter. My name is Nancy. I live with my husband Jonathan and his parents at his family's home. When we first got married and decided that he would be living with them over there, it wasn't particularly any problems, and I got along well with my in-laws. However, 1 year ago, we decided that they would be ones moving into our new house, and that was when my mother-in-law started harassing me. Every single day, she was verbally abusing me, but without ever talking back to her. I simply kept my mouth shut and did the best to tolerate it. The reason for that was because I was going to collect as much evidence as I could of the harassment and drop the revenge bomb onto her.
Nancy, dinner isn't ready yet?
I'm preparing it right now, so please wait a little longer. It should be finished soon.
Oh dear, you're cooking meat for dinner tonight? I was in the mood for fish, so that's disappointing.
I'm sorry about that. I didn't know.
You know what? It's decided. Tonight we're gonna eat out for dinner then.
What? But I've already cooked dinner for all of us tonight.
Well, I'm not in the mood for it. Looks like it doesn't taste very good anyway. If you have leftovers, then you could just throw it all away. There's nothing I'm gonna eat that looks disgusting.
But how can you say that? That's such a waste of food.
If you wanted me to eat your cooking, then you should have been cooking food that I actually want to eat. Honey, let's go out and eat dinner tonight.
On that day in particular, my husband was working a job overnight, so I was stuck eating an entire plate of meat all by myself for dinner. I didn't want to waste the food. The next day, when my husband came home, I spoke to my husband about what happened, and Jonathan was furious. Even though it was in the middle of the night, he began lecturing his mother.
I'm ashamed that you're the type of mother that would harass her own daughter-in-law. Go and apologize to Nancy right now!
I never harassed Nancy. What are you talking about? I'm definitely not going to apologize for anything.
If that's your response, then get out! Out of my house, right now!
Despite the fact that it was in the middle of the night, my husband kicked his mother out of the house, but his father panicked and chased after her and let her back into the home. After being lectured by her son, I thought her harassment would subside just a little bit, but I was wrong. After that, my mother-in-law didn't calm down. Instead, her harassment towards me only escalated. She started pulling really awful pranks on me as well. And even though my father-in-law was there the entire time and saw how much I was suffering, he never once tried to scold his wife for it. That was when I knew for a fact the reason why my mother-in-law had such a bad personality was partially due for the fact that her husband constantly spoiled her. But then, when I was sitting on the couch, very clearly exhausted from my mother-in-law's continued harassment, he came over to me and nonchalantly said,
"Sorry about my wife."
He didn't seem genuine at all, and it irritated me. That was when I decided to tell my father-in-law about all the evidence I had collected so far of his wife's harassment towards me. Would you like to know the reason why I've been able to tolerate it? That's because I've been collecting evidence of the harassment towards me. The more settlement fee that I can receive from you when I get a divorce. When I said that, my father-in-law was frozen in his tracks. His wife must have overheard the conversation because she immediately ran over and started screaming at me. "So that means you only married Jonathan because you were after his money? You worthless piece of garbage!" Don't worry, I'm recording this conversation as well. I pulled out my phone with a smile. And that was when my father-in-law dragged his wife away from me and locked the door into her bedroom. And then he apologized over and over and begged me to...
Please, give me that recording.
But of course, I refused. The only thing I said was, "Please move out within the next 3 days," and he immediately started packing with his wife. Even though all this time he had been spoiling his wife and never once got a word back to her, now he was finally furious and yelling at her to
Go and apologize to Nancy immediately!
However, as if I was talking to myself out loud, enough for them to hear me, I said, "It's too late if she apologizes now," and continued to help them pack. That was when I received a phone call from my husband. Apparently his father had called him.
Please, I'll kick the two of them out within today, so please don't divorce me!
On the other end of the phone, my husband was sobbing. When I told him that I wouldn't divorce him as long as he kicked them out of the house, he came flying home and pushed his parents out himself. He forced them into a cheap hotel and he arranged their belongings to be carried over to the storage unit that we previously had. He informed his parents by the end of the month that he would be terminating a contract of the storage unit and that he was only going to be paying for the 3 nights in hotel, and he kicked him out. But on their way out, my mother-in-law glared at us and started complaining right at me.
You have some nerve to kick out your husband's parents from the home. You better watch. I swear I'm gonna make you two divorce.
Stop that! That's enough! There's no reason why you should ever be able to say or do that! Just hurry up and get out!
When my husband raised his voice, he pushed them out of the door and succeeded in kicking them out. I was finally able to regain peace in my home, and then a couple days later, when my husband was at work, I was quietly reading a book by myself when suddenly my mother-in-law showed up at the door saying that she was here to pick up some things that she forgot. Jonathan had already told me that if his parents showed up at the door, not to let them in no matter what, so I tried to get her to leave, but then she forcefully opened the door and stormed into the house. As soon as she got in, my mother-in-law started screaming at me with extreme force. Of course it was a lie that she was going to forget something inside.
This is all your fault, because of you, I don't have a place to live anymore. What are you gonna do about it? You think you're strong just because you're able to trick Jonathan into taking your side?
This is our house to begin with. There's no reason whatsoever why we should let somebody live here to harass me.
Who do you think you even are? You're the daughter-in-law. You should be obeying orders.
I thought all she was going to do is continue yelling at me, but then she heated up even more and started throwing a full-blown tantrum. And then she started destroying the room. The brand new HD TV that we just bought, a refrigerator, she flipped them over and started tearing apart the living room. Stop, please! Please leave!
Shut up! This is what you get for kicking me out! I'm gonna make this stupid house unlivable for you!
Stop it, please! Ah! My mother-in-law wasn't listening, so I tried to step in and physically try to stop her as she continued to destroy the household appliances. But then, I cut my arm and was injured. That was right when my husband came back home from work.
Mom? Oh, Nancy! You're injured! What the hell do you think you're doing? Come here!
Jonathan, let me go! This is all her fault! I didn't do anything wrong! Do you enjoy hurting the elderly?
That's enough already! Nancy, call the police right now!
All right.
Police? What do you think you're doing? Let go of me! Fine, I get it. I'll leave. Just let me go.
Obviously, there's no way we're letting you go anywhere! You better not think you can just walk out of here after what you've done to my wife and to our house!
My husband held his mother down, handed her straight over to the police that came running in. My arm didn't stop bleeding, so as soon as my mother-in-law was taken by the police, we rushed to the hospital, and it turned out that my injury was deep and I needed to get stitches. My husband was furious, so furious that he decided to sue his mother and collect a settlement fee for all the medical expenses as well as the damages to the house. When my father-in-law found out about that, he ran over to apologize, but as usual, we didn't sense a drop of regret in his pathetic apology.
Hey, looks like your mother did something a little crazy. Sorry about that. I'll be sure to scold her for it too, so please, just let it go this time. Are you kidding me? You seriously think that you could just blow it off like that? She even hurt Nancy! But still, that's no reason to sue your own mother. I'm sure your mother feels terrible about what she's done, so please forgive her.
Jonathan was even more livid that his father didn't seem to take it seriously at all, and he told them that he was going to be cutting all ties with them. After that, even though my mother-in-law was strictly warned by the police not to come anywhere near our property again, she continued to show up around our house, always walking around and screaming into the window and through the door. Even when I was inside the house, she would be yelling so loud that I could hear her horrible words inside, that I wasn't able to relax at home. Because she had already been warned by the police, they told us that they wanted us to call them immediately if anything were to happen again. So I decided to call the local precinct and explain the situation to them. As a result of that, the police started watching over our house around the clock. My mother-in-law ended up in the hands of the police multiple occasions, but my father-in-law would have to pick up the phone, answer the police, and go pick her up from the station many times, always having to apologize for his wife's bad behavior. Every single time that would happen, he would be scolded by the police that even his mental state started to decline. Even though they adjusted to moving into the new place, rumors started to spread that they were always in and out of the police station, and my father-in-law started to suffer from insomnia. And then, because he wasn't getting any sleep and was so mentally and physically exhausted, one day he fell over at home and unfortunately he was hit in a bad place and was left paralyzed. Yet despite all of that, my mother-in-law went right back to her old ways and started coming back to our house. So even though my father-in-law was hospitalized, he was receiving phone calls from the police. My father-in-law was no longer able to take it anymore, and at the end of this rehabilitation, he was finally able to walk. He took his wife and they moved far from the city. After that, the two of them never showed their faces in front of us ever again. Now that they were stuck living far deep into the mountains where nobody else was around, my mother-in-law was the only one who could take care of her husband, and I heard that she's been exhausted from doing all the nursing that she has to do. On the other hand, I was finally able to enjoy my time with my husband, and I could finally say that peace had returned to our family. I never wanted to have to go through that ever again, so I truly am glad that my in-laws moved far out of the mountains. I'm so grateful that my husband, who protected me all the way from his mother's harassment, and from now on and forever, I want to treasure my husband and enjoy our lives together. My mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law lived together, just the two of them. I respected both of them very much. However, my uncle was a very bad man. At my husband's childhood home, apart from my mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law, my uncle and his wife and a daughter are also living there. During the important holidays and celebrations, such as New Year's, Christmas, and Thanksgiving, the whole family gathers and celebrates together. My husband divorced his first wife, and he told me that the reason is because their personalities didn't match. However, it seems that my uncle didn't like that. It's more that my uncle didn't like my ex-husband's wife. My uncle kept comparing me to my ex-husband's wife behind my back. My husband and my mother-in-law, as well as my husband's other family members, treat me very well, and I felt very welcome to the family. I'm the second wife, so I braced myself for any prejudices that my husband's family might say to me. So even when my uncle made rude comments to me, I just ignored those comments and went about my day. However, I thought to myself that I would take revenge someday. I felt excited thinking about how I would take revenge after all the rude things he said to me. Then, during the New Year's last year, all the family members and extended family members gathered to celebrate. At the time, the comfort room on the first floor was being used, so I decided to go to the second floor and use the comfort room there. The moment I got out of the comfort room, my uncle showed up. Everyone was there eating and drinking in the living room on the first floor, so I had a feeling that my uncle would start his barrage of rude comments. When he said something very shocking, with a wide grin plastered on his face, he slowly crept towards me and said,
"Let me do it with you here."
Hearing those dirty words, I felt disgusted all of a sudden. First of all, my uncle is already 54 years old, and his wife is pregnant with their baby. I can't believe he would say such a thing. I've always thought he was a scumbag, ever since the first day we met, but on that day, I realized that he was truly a scumbag, down from the depths of the wicked soul. What? I don't understand what you're saying at all. I told him, and then I hurriedly walked away from him. But then he uttered something even more shocking.
"Your husband's first wife made me do it, but you won't?"
I was utterly shocked by what he said. Not knowing what to say, I looked his way. He then grabbed me by the shoulders and said,
"Did you just reject me? Reject me again and fall down the stairs! Or you'll do it with me and you won't fall down the stairs. Choose!"
He told me to choose from those two, but I said, "There's no way that I will do it with you. Don't come any closer." I shouted at him, and then I drove down the stairs. I was aware that I would stop halfway down the stairs because the stairs in the house is a curve halfway. At first, my uncle looked very shocked by what I did. My body made a loud sound when I fell down the stairs. So hearing my husband and mother-in-law along with the relatives rushed up the stairs towards me, my uncle pretended that he just walked out of the rooms on the second floor, like he did nothing wrong with what just happened. He pretended like he was worried about me and running towards me. My husband had a worried expression on his face.
"Are you alright? What happened?"
He asked me worriedly, so I looked in his direction where my uncle was standing. My uncle then instantly looked away. I could have just told them what happened at that time right away. However, I had a plan in mind, and I didn't say anything to my husband during that time. Everyone was worried about the injuries when I fell down the stairs, but thankfully I didn't have any serious injuries. Actually, I've always thought that I wanted to take revenge for all the rude things that my husband had said and did to me. So I had a recording device with me. So every time he talked to me, I pressed the recording button on. Then, when I arrived home, I told my husband and mother-in-law that I had something important to tell them. So I invited them in the room, and then I made them listen to the recordings of the rude comments that my uncle said to me.
"Why didn't you tell me this before? Why wait until now to tell me this?"
This is unbelievable! How could he say such things? Why didn't you tell us earlier?
They scolded me. That was her first reaction. Well, I guess I do understand why they felt angry at first. I would have reacted the same way if I was in their shoes. They were just concerned about me because they cared about me. Of course, my husband was very angry about what happened, but to my surprise, my mother-in-law was just enraged that my husband was. They said that they would go to my uncle and confront him about this immediately. However, my uncle's wife is pregnant with their second child, and if they go confront my uncle about this, his wife would find out about what he's been doing. I thought that it would not be good for the baby if the mother received strong emotions such as shock and grief. So I told my husband and mother-in-law that I think it would be best to confront my uncle about having his wife give birth. That's what I told both of them, to which my husband responded saying,
No! I'll go to him ASAP! I'll beat him to death!
I could see how much my husband wanted to confront my uncle immediately, but I convinced him to do it after my uncle's wife gave birth. So both my husband and mother-in-law agreed to my plea. Then, right after my uncle's wife gave birth to the baby, I immediately told her about what her husband had been doing, since it was a very heavy topic. I thought the atmosphere would be intense, but to my surprise, my uncle's wife told me she is gathering information about the husband's affair with another woman. That is why, even though she felt enraged, just like how my husband and mother-in-law reacted when they found out about what my uncle had been doing, she was actually happy to hear that because it became effective divorce material for her. With all this evidence, I can now divorce my husband without a lot of hassle. She thanked me instead. After telling the uncle's wife about it, it now became my husband's turn to talk, since there was no need for him to hold back anymore. We all waited for my uncle to come home. When he finally arrived home, my husband yelled,
Hey, old man! What did you do to my wife?
My husband shoved my uncle to the floor and beat the hell out of him. My uncle tried to explain, saying,
Wait! What are you doing? Stop it! I said stop what you're doing!
My uncle desperately tried to run away from my husband's punches. However, since my husband was a rugby player when he was in college, he maintained his muscular body, so he's very strong. No matter how one sees it, there is no way my meek uncle could fight back. My mother-in-law, my uncle's wife, and I were watching them. I was worried about them for a second, but when I turned my head towards my mother-in-law and uncle's wife, they looked calm and unconcerned. Apparently, the day I told my husband about what happened, he wanted to beat the hell out of my uncle immediately. However, since I told him not to confront my uncle immediately, because his wife was still pregnant, my husband held back the urge to beat my uncle up. Because of that, his anger grew more and more by the day. So he was finally able to confront my uncle. He let all of the anger out physically. When my uncle forced me to choose between the two dreadful options, I ended up choosing to fall down the stairs by myself. But I didn't do it that. I think he would have really pushed me down the stairs. There was a possibility that I would have passed away if I hit my head hard enough on the ground. Thinking of that possibility, my husband was even more enraged. Then, after my husband beat the hell out of my uncle's wife said, Let's get a divorce. I have all the pieces of evidence from your affair with another woman. Of course, I will demand alimony from you. Hearing those words come out of his wife's mouth, my uncle was dumbfounded and stood there with his mouth open. I'm sure my uncle could tell the reason why he got beat up by my husband is because I told my husband about what my uncle did. However, it seemed like my uncle didn't realize that his wife knew about the affair. He was shocked when his wife said to get a divorce.
What are you saying? You just gave birth to our baby!
I just gave birth to our baby, so what? You didn't have an affair with another woman, but you also tried to have an affair with a family member. I don't want to be your wife anymore. I want to get a divorce as soon as possible. I never want to see your face ever again. Get out of here!
But...
After that, we didn't butt in about the divorce, but my uncle's wife dumped him and his relatives abandoned him. I heard that he's now alone and depressed. Aside from this woman's problem, my uncle borrowed money from his relatives. However, he never returned a single penny. So he had a very bad reputation in the neighborhood. Because of that, everyone stopped interacting with him. Of course, my husband and I had no idea that my uncle's wife was thinking about divorce until she told us about it, but my husband said,
I should have beat the hell out of that bastard earlier!
He was still a bit angry. It seemed like my husband couldn't forgive what I said. My husband was enraged by my uncle, but when I saw the jealous expression on my husband's face, I have to admit that it did feel a little happy. Well, now that I think about it, I guess falling down the stairs intentionally is not something that anyone should do at all. However, since I was forced to choose one of the two dreadful options, I had no choice but to choose one. That's what anyone would have done in that situation. After everything was settled, when my uncle said to me about my ex-husband's wife, letting the uncle do it to her, I couldn't get the words out of my head, so it still bothered me. However, if that was the reason why my uncle and his ex-wife got divorced, I wouldn't be surprised if my husband felt even more bitter towards my uncle. I waited for the right time to ask my husband, then I asked the question. My husband responded saying that he didn't know about that, but even if it was true, he said that the past is the past. I thought that I shouldn't ask any more questions about it, so I never talked to him about the topic ever again. After a while passed, I received a call from my uncle's now ex-wife, and she told me that the uncle paid alimony and she demanded that they are now finally divorced now. She thanked me for adding clear evidence to all the case that she was investigating. As for my uncle who got dumped by his wife, his daughter rejected him too, and so he is now living alone and depressed. As for my uncle's wife's wife, she cooks delicious food and she cleaned the house thoroughly every single day. However, ever since they got a divorce, they are now living separately. The house that used to be filled with joy and laughter during the holidays is now looking like a house of ruins. Because of that, combined with his ugly behavior and lack of hospitality, the house never got to see a warm gathering of happy family ever again. Well, as for me though, I'm just glad because he got what he deserves. Besides, I don't want to see him ever again. I'm looking forward to seeing how lonely my evil uncle will be for the rest of his life. I have an older sister, Regina, who is a few years older than me. Regina is divorced, and after she got separated from her husband, she came back to our parents' home to live there. But she always does something troublesome, so I'm sick and tired of dealing with her. By troublesome, what I mean is, my older sister loves going to hot springs and all-you-could-eat buffets, but whenever she goes there, she takes her 6th grade son, and even though her son is already 12 years old, she claims that her son is still in kindergarten. That's why, even though he's already a grade schooler, I think it's wrong to claim that your child is still in kindergarten when he's actually in 6th grade already. This is what I told her plenty of times to stop doing that. However, my older sister never listens to what I tell her. One day in the living room of the house, we were planning to eat out with Regina's friends.
Reggie is a very small boy, and he has a very baby face, so I'm sure they'll think he's still in kindergarten. I'm sure he'll pass for a kindergarten. First of all, isn't $10 too much for a grade schooler? He won't eat that much, so it'll be a waste to pay that much. It's fine. Just tell them that he's in kindergarten. Food is free for kindergarteners after all. After field day, just change his clothes to make him look like he's a kindergartner. Then, go to a BBQ restaurant, okay?
She boastfully told her friends about the technique. I can't believe my sister is doing this again. This is why I told her again like I always do. You go to that BBQ place a lot, so you're a regular customer there now, right? I'm sure they'll notice if you keep doing that. It won't be long until they will stop you from entering the restaurant. When I told her that, she got angry at me. My older sister's strange behavior of breaking rules does not stop from there. Regina sometimes goes to bathe in the hot springs, but she takes her son with her to the women's bathroom. At the restaurant, only the restaurant will be in trouble, but that's not the case when it comes to the hot springs. The customers will feel weird and uncomfortable if a young boy will get in the shower and the hot springs with them. Of course, I told my older sister that many of times already. It's wrong to bring your son to a female bath with you. There are young girls around the same age as Reggie, you know. I'm sure that the other customers will also feel weird and uncomfortable. Everyone is naked in the shower room and bath, so it's nastier than a restaurant. I scolded her like this, but just as always, she got angry and said,
Reggie has a baby face, so no one would suspect him to be a 6th grader.
I don't care if he has a baby face or if he's still small. He's already a 6th grader, so that's the reality. No matter how much I cautioned and warned Regina about that, she never stops doing those things. That is why I decided to write a letter to the restaurants and the hot spring establishments. Letter. A boy who is clearly in elementary school was in the women's bath. There may be other customers who feel uncomfortable with that, so I think it would be better if you asked the customer to show their ID, so that you could check their ages. I wrote the letters anonymously, and then I sent it to the hot spring establishments, where my older sister goes often. I also dropped the letter in the suggestion box at the restaurant, but I wonder if they will properly handle the problem. By the way, I have a son who is in 1st grade. I follow the rules by paying the student price for my child. Whenever he makes mistakes for kindergarten, my son, Vince, will say,
Are you in elementary school?
Vince will probably say that. I've been to a hot spring establishment together with my older sister and her friends, but at the time I saw Reggie grinning broadly, looking at the woman. I wonder when Regina is planning to pretend that Reggie is still in kindergarten. Hot spring establishments have a rule that boys over 10 years old and older are not allowed to enter the women's bath. Also, there's a huge sign posted on the walls of the changing rooms. Children of the opposite sex can enter, but only until 9 years old. By the way, Regina's son Reggie can't shower by himself, nor can he stay at home alone. The other day, Regina called me all of a sudden.
Reggie can't stay at home alone, and he can't take a bath by himself anymore, so look after him.
When she told me that, I was shocked. What? He can't do all that by himself? But he's already in 6th grade, right? Both of our father and mother are worried about their grandson's late development, so they suggested Regina enroll Reggie into a childcare facility. However, my older sister replied,
That's a waste of money. Reggie is not a child with special needs. What are you trying to impose on me?
Regina was furious, but frankly speaking, my older sister is abnormal, and all her friends are abnormal too. Looking at their nonchalant reactions when my older sister breaks the rules, I have a feeling that Regina's friends are also doing the same thing. What do I have a problem with her? That's because my house is close to my parents' house where Regina lives. If Regina thinks that for places with age limits, she should just lie that her son is under the age limit. Then one day, I don't know where she got the information from, but when my friends and I were talking about going to the amusement park with the children, Regina stormed into the room and she strongly forced us to take her son with us. I don't mind if Reggie comes with us. He's welcome to join us, but since there is an age limit for free entrance, I asked him to hand me the entrance fee for the son while she replied,
Huh? Reggie can get in for free, so that's not a problem, is it?
Regina confidently told me that it was all right to break the rules, so I responded, Of course it won't work. I will pay for my son who's in 1st grade, but not for your son who's in 6th grade. Of course they'll think something is fishy.
It's your fault for being so honest by saying that your son is an elementary schooler. Anyway, I already brought Reggie here with me, so I will make you take him with me to the amusement park with the other kids.
Regina commanded the room with a booming voice and marched her way home. We ended up taking Reggie with us. However, my friends and I can't lie about Reggie's age, so we ended up paying the regular fee for an elementary school student. When I arrived at home after playing with the kids at the amusement park, I asked my older sister for the amount that we paid as an entrance fee for her son, but she coldly refused.
Huh? Who told you to pay the entrance fee? You did it on your own will. Didn't I teach you how to enter for free? It's your fault for not doing as I said.
At that point, it was hopeless talking to her about this. Situations like this happens a lot of the time, so frankly speaking, I don't want to take her son with me anywhere anymore. But thankfully, my older sister, who keeps breaking the rules, is finally banned from the restaurant buffets and hot spring establishments. The reason for banning her is because the hot spring establishment received a complaint from a customer. Apparently, Regina went to the hot spring establishment with her son with a kindergartner price like she always does. However, a little girl around Reggie's age was walking at the poolside. Reggie stared at the little girl, but the girl looked at Reggie and she recognized him. She happened to be from the same class as Reggie. They were classmates. The little girl felt uncomfortable, so she cried to her mom and told her about it. The little girl's mother knew that the rules of the hot springs, so she got angry and reported the hot spring establishment staff that an elementary school boy her daughter's classmates with is in the woman's bath. When she reported it to the staff, the little girl's mother mentioned that Reggie is a 6th grade daughter's classmates and that he is overage to be in a woman's bath. So Regina was called out by the staff to explain herself. Regina was furious that she was told on by another in the same class as her son, but because there is such clear evidence that her son was not under the age of 9, Regina and Reggie were banned from the hot spring establishment. As for the restaurant with barbecue buffet, I'm not 100% sure, but maybe that's because my letter I wrote and placed inside the suggestion box. The staff might have noticed something and asked, and as if on cue, my older sister and her son arrived at the restaurant. One of the staff asked Regina if her son was really in kindergarten. He asked her to show an ID of her son, but Regina's response was shocking. She got angry after being asked about her son's age, and she went wild and crazy and made a scene at the restaurant in front of everyone. As a result, the staff called the police since they couldn't contain her. Of course, it was my older sister's fault for ignoring the rules of the restaurant, so she is the one at fault. However, because of what happened, neighbors and friends, people around her soon knew what she did, lying in the hot spring establishment and also in the restaurant with buffets about the age of her son. Not long after that, our parents found out about what my older sister did. Before that, maybe not as much as I did to her, but my parents also cautioned her.
Stop doing such embarrassing behavior.
However, since the gossip about my older sister going to a different restaurant and establishment, lying about her son's age and eating for free spread around the whole neighborhood, our parents became furious and scolded her strongly this time.
How many times do I have to tell you not to do such embarrassing behavior, you fool?
I am very embarrassed because of you. Everyone called me a poor old woman who can't even afford to buy a meal for her grandson.
Both our mother and father were furious. Our parents have always been the type of people who cared about what other people think about them. So when this happened, their fury was unbelievable. My parents warned Regina that if she continued to do such embarrassing acts, they would kick her out of the house together with her son. And they also threatened to cut ties with her. Afraid that she'll lose the place to stay, she tried to calm our parents down by saying the rumors will go away before you know it, and since Reggie was still a small boy for his age, what happened this time is very uncommon. By uttering those words, Regina showed that she didn't reflect on what happened, meaning that she didn't learn from the trouble that she caused, and she will most likely do the same thing again in the future. That is why our parents decided to kick her out of the house along with her son. That's when my older sister finally realized that our parents were being serious, so she cried and said that she would never do the same thing again. However, Regina ended up moving out of the house and moving into a very old shabby apartment. She had no choice but to move out because she was forced to move out. When she was living with her parents' home, Regina was working part-time, but the reason why she didn't pay rent during that time is because she lived with her parents' house. She also didn't have a household chores and cleaning and doing laundry. As for the food, our mother cooked for them, but because Regina's reckless behavior, she will lose all of those privileges. All I could say about what happened to Regina is that she got what she deserved. I heard that Regina is now doing several part-time jobs day in and day out because she is now having to pay for rent and food, expenses that she did not have to pay for when she was living in her parents' house. When Regina and her son were still living at the parents' house, she was able to afford eating with her son, so I don't understand why she was being so stingy and paying for stuff for her son. But since she can't afford to eat out now, and she is banned from all the different places, I'm very happy that she finally got a taste of karma because she deserved it. Of course, if she ever asks me again to take out her son with my child, whether it be eating out or going to amusement parks, there is no way I'll agree or say yes to her.
My husband and I are married for a few years now, but we don't have a child yet. Because of work, my husband and I live in a state that is different from where my parents-in-law live. I met my parents-in-law once a year whenever my husband visits them. My mother-in-law and father-in-law live together in my husband's childhood home. My father-in-law does his own thing, not bothering anyone, but the problem is my mother-in-law. All she talks about is herself, and she doesn't think about others at all. My mother-in-law has a formidable personality, so my husband and I visit my parents-in-law only during the times when my sister-in-law and her husband visit too. My husband is the youngest child in their family, but when the time comes in the future when my parents-in-law will need to be taken care of, we decided that my sister-in-law and her husband would live together. My husband and I will send money for them to use as an allowance. I'm very thankful that I do not have to live together with my parents-in-law. My sister-in-law and her husband both have a good income, and they are financially stable. So I'm pretty sure they are not worried about anything for the future, at least when it comes to finances. However, whenever I go to visit her, my mother-in-law says that she needs to live with a man who is related to her by blood. Maybe it's because she wants to live together with her son, or maybe she just wants to use me as a slave. My mother-in-law always tells me that the wife should do the household chores. Whenever she says that to me, my sister-in-law rescues me. My husband always scolds his mother, and he tells her to apologize to his sister's husband, who has agreed to live together with them because he feels sorry for him. However, my mother-in-law never lends an ear to such a scolding. During our visit this time as well, my husband and his sister discussed a similar issue with their mother. If I butt in again on their conversation, my mother-in-law will be angry at me again. So while they were having a discussion, I went out to buy groceries and stuff. I've been suffering from bunions for years. That is why most of my shoes are custom made. After arriving home from grocery shopping, we had dinner, and then after that, my sister-in-law, her husband, and I had a chat about how comfortable it is to wear custom-made shoes. We were having so much fun discussing the topic. My sister even mentioned that she's thinking of getting a pair of custom-made shoes. But the next day, my mother-in-law told us that she was going to meet a friend, so she said goodbye to us and walked out the door. My sister-in-law and I thought that it was strange for my mother-in-law to meet someone outside the house when we came here to visit her. But my mother-in-law is annoying when she's around anyway, so we decided that it was a good thing for us. I just relaxed in the living room together with my sister-in-law and her husband. But after a while, my father-in-law received a call from my mother-in-law's friend. Her friend told him that my mother-in-law couldn't walk because of a terrible shoe sore. She then told my father-in-law that he needed to pick her up and take her home. After hearing that, I suddenly had a bad feeling about what happened. I thought that maybe, so I ran to the front door and checked the shoe cabinet. I frantically looked for my shoes, but just as I thought, my shoes were gone. My father-in-law actually went to where my mother-in-law was and carried her home. My suspicions were right. Just as I suspected, my mother-in-law was wearing my custom-made shoes. My mother-in-law probably wanted to brag about my comfortable custom-made shoes because she wore it to a meeting with her friend. She walked a lot wearing my shoes. Custom-made shoes that were made just for my feet. So, as a result of wearing shoes that do not fit well, her feet went sore and bled. Because of that, her heel and pinky toe are bleeding. First of all, I have smaller feet compared to my mother-in-law. I'm pretty sure she could tell right away that it's too small for her, the moment she slipped her feet into those shoes. My mother-in-law's friend noticed that my mother-in-law was walking strangely. She told my mother-in-law, "I think it will be best if you go home now. We need to call someone to pick you up." Apparently, her friend advised her to go home and rest, but my mother-in-law is stubborn. She didn't listen to her friend's advice at all, so her friend forcefully took her phone from her and called my father-in-law. After my father-in-law brought my mother-in-law home, my sister-in-law and my husband scolded her like a little child. My father-in-law, who doesn't usually care about what other people do, was very angry because of his wife's insane behavior. However, instead of feeling bad and reflecting on her actions, she mockingly says,
Yeah, I was wrong. Whatever. Custom-made shoes are not as great as you claim them to be.
My mother-in-law complained and complained, like she was the one who was wronged, but because my mother-in-law wore my shoes with her wrong-sized feet, it is now stained with her blood. Also, since she forced her feet to wear my shoes, they are now deformed and crushed. There was no way of bringing it back to its original slate. Because of that, my husband said to his mother,
You should apologize first before complaining about the shoes. Those shoes are custom made. They're not cheap at all.
My husband angrily said, but
So what if they're expensive? I injured my feet because of those freaking shoes. I should be demanding alimony from you for this. Besides, the shoes are not as good as you claim them to be. Also, I already returned them to you. So that's enough, right? The shoes will just return to their original state after washing. What more do you want from me?
my mother-in-law has no intentions of apologizing at all, let alone reflect on her horrible actions. That night, my husband and I discussed what to do with his mother. Then, early the next day, my husband and I made our move. While everyone was still asleep, we tiptoed our way to the front door, and we glued all my mother-in-law's shoes inside the shoe closet. The sandals are on the side of the shoebox as well, and the slippers outside. We glued every footwear she owned to the ground. However, it would be a hassle if my mother-in-law gets injured as a result of that, so we made sure to glue them in a way that she wouldn't trip and fall. After all that handiwork, my husband and I went back to bed. When our alarm went off at 7 in the morning, my husband and I woke up like nothing happened. We then went about our morning routines. My husband and I were excited waiting for my mother-in-law to wear one of her footwear. Then, around noon, my mother-in-law was mad, so we knew she finally tried to wear one of the glued footwear. My husband and I looked at each other. My mother-in-law probably noticed that I was the one who glued her shoes because she looked at me with a reddened face and nose flaring. She then pointed at the glued shoes on the shoe closet and shouted,
What in the world is this? Justine, you're the one who did this, didn't you? I'm sure it's you. You're the only one who would do this to me.
My mother-in-law was furious. Oh, my mother-in-law, is there something wrong?
Of course something is wrong. I tried to wear my shoes, but it won't budge because it's stuck. This pair of shoes and that pair of shoes too. All my shoes are glued inside the shoe closet. Just my shoes.
That's when my husband and I took out the superglue that we used, and I said, judging from your reaction, it seems like you lack reflection. Should we punish you more? I wonder what I will glue next. Then my husband also spoke up.
It seems like you want us to take care of you, but I'm afraid that would be impossible. Because if you make us angry again in the future, your things will be glued immediately again. Like this and that.
After saying that, my husband smiled. My mother-in-law's face went blue and pale, so I took out the superglue again and brought it closer to her. I then let the superglue dangle in front of her face and said, More importantly, are your ears glued to something? I think they might be because you don't listen to what others say. It also seems like you can't hear any caution, advice, or warning. Do you want me to use this remover to clean your ears? Or do you prefer that I shut your loud mouth with this superglue? I'm sure you won't notice if I do it when you're asleep. I then opened the cap, to which my mother-in-law responded.
Abe, I'm sorry. I won't wear your shoes without asking permission anymore. So please, forgive me.
My mother-in-law desperately tried to apologize. She said that she won't live with us, that she will live together with my sister-in-law and her husband. Well, I have no idea whether she truly reflected on her actions with this. But if she does something wrong again, I now know what to do. I'll just glue her things together again. So my husband and I decided to forgive my mother-in-law this time. By the way, as for the cleaning up of her glued shoes, when my mother-in-law forced me to take the shoes out of the shoe closet, some of the paint from the shoe closet was also peeled off. Because of that, my father-in-law was furious, and she had to suffer. Also, of course, when we got her to reimburse me for the custom-made shoes, when I told my mother-in-law how much the shoes cost,
They're just shoes. Why are they so expensive?
my father-in-law, who was standing by her side, glared at my mother-in-law, so she hunched. At that time, my sister-in-law was grocery shopping with her husband, but after she arrived home, I told her the whole story. My sister-in-law laughed out loud and said,
So I guess we'll need to bring the glue with us whenever we're around her. I think we'll be able to use that technique when we start living with my mother. So thank you for your clever revenge.
Then, for the remaining days we had before leaving, my mother-in-law became quiet and stopped causing any trouble. When our stay was over, my husband and I went home and arrived safely. I didn't really think that our plan would work out that well, but I heard that my father-in-law scolded my mother-in-law after that, saying that my mother-in-law deserved what she got. So, well, it must have been painful. My mother-in-law used to say a lot that she would live together with her son, and it's a given that I, as the wife, should take care of both of my husband's parents. But she now takes back what she said before. She apologized to my sister-in-law and her husband, begging them to live together with them. She probably thought that she would be in danger if she lived together with me and my husband. But well, my sister-in-law mentioned that she will use my idea as a last resort if my mother-in-law starts acting like crazy again. So I'm sure my mother-in-law will stop pretending to not listen. Karma finally got to her. And by the way, the next year my husband and I visited his parents' home, together with my sister-in-law and her husband. But when we arrived at my parents-in-law's house, we told her we had a souvenir for her and showed the superglue. My mother-in-law said, "Abe!" And then she ran away, afraid of the holler glue. So after everything that happened, whenever we visit my parents-in-law every year, we hand my mother-in-law the superglue, after saying to her that we have a souvenir for her. It has become our little funny tradition now. My younger brother has a birthmark on his face. His birthmark is located on his left cheek to his neck. It is not that thick, but it does stand out. When I first went to meet my husband's parents, my mother-in-law was shocked by the sight of the birthmark, and she was speechless. When my younger brother stood up from his seat and headed to the bathroom, my mother-in-law made a comment about my brother, Mason's face.
I noticed that your younger brother has a birthmark on his face. Is that the fault of your parents?
She also said,
I wonder what sinful things your younger brother did in his previous existence.
My mother-in-law said a series of rude comments one after another. My husband scolded his mother for such behavior, and I was also angry. My younger brother is a very kind and serious person. I am very proud of my younger brother, and I don't feel embarrassed of him at all. Also, it's not our parents' fault that he has a unique mark on his face. I couldn't forgive my mother-in-law for saying such a rude comment about my parents doing some sinful act in their previous lives. Come to think of it, the first time I met my mother-in-law, I remember thinking that she is a rude and thoughtless person. Both of my parents were born and raised in the countryside, where the population is not that high. When my mother-in-law asked me where I was from, she said,
Oh my, you came from the boondocks? My son chose someone primitive. I wonder if you have any common sense at all.
She made another rude comment. Having common sense is not determined by where you come from, but by the environment in which you live. However, my mother-in-law judged me on where I came from, saying that I lack common sense because of that. Of course, when my husband heard his mother say that, he became very furious and scolded his mother. My mother-in-law showed me all kinds of insanity, from big things to little things, when we were living together under the same roof. I am thankful that whenever my mother-in-law said and acted rudely, my husband was always on my side, and he always comes to my rescue. If my husband agreed to the crazy stuff that my mother-in-law said and did, I don't think I would have been able to bear it. However, one day, my father-in-law got sick and ended up in the hospital. It was not a life or death type of illness, but he was advised by the doctor to rest his body for a while, so we had no choice but to take a long break from work. Well, my father-in-law is compensated by his company and insurance company, but no one knows exactly when my father-in-law will be able to get back to work, and they have to continue paying the house loan and other bills. Because of that, he was told that he couldn't maintain the house. As a result, my mother-in-law begged to live with us, at least until her husband got well again. Honestly speaking, I didn't want to live together with my mother-in-law at all. But since my father-in-law treated me well like I'm his daughter, so I thought that if doing this for him, I can endure living with my mother-in-law. Then, after a while, my father-in-law's health slowly recovered, and at first, he was an inpatient, but he then became an outpatient. Then there was less need for him to go to the hospital, so I thought that maybe it's about time that we stopped living together with my mother-in-law. Around the same time, I received a call from my younger brother. Of course, I've met my younger brother's fiancée before, and when I heard that they were getting married, my husband and I were very happy to hear the wonderful news. Then, my brother's fiancée told my brother that she wants to properly meet us as an engaged couple. So we checked our schedules and set a date to meet. We decided to meet at our house. And the date finally arrived, and in a friendly and relaxed atmosphere, we discussed about how they'll do their wedding and whether they will move into a new house after getting married. We were happily chatting and having fun. But then, my mother-in-law suddenly decided to go out of the room, just like she always does. She uttered another rude comment.
Are you sure that the horrible birthmark on your face is not hereditary? I wonder if your future children will be all right. Can you guarantee that your future children will not be hideous like you? Your wife's parents must be worried about that too.
She said something unbelievably rude and stupid again. First of all, birthmarks are not hereditary, and this is not a topic to be discussed in this situation. And most importantly, this is none of my mother-in-law's business. My younger brother's fiancé didn't care about the birthmark on his face, but when I tried to say something about my mother-in-law's rude behavior, my husband said in a booming voice,
That's enough! Don't you know that what you're saying is very rude? How could you say something very rude like that to them? I'm actually embarrassed right now that you're my mother!
My husband raised his voice and scolded her, but my mother-in-law didn't care at all.
Come to think of it, I think I remember something like that. Was it blackjack or something?
My mother-in-law said that and laughed like a witch. I've had enough of my mother-in-law's rudeness, so I stood up before my husband stood up, and I grabbed both her cheeks between her right hand. I then said this to her. This is none of your business. Are you inferring that my younger brother did something to you? What did he ever do to you? You always bully my brother about the birthmark on his face, but your face is wacky. Go on, do a wacky pose. I put all my strength in my right hand and shook her. Then I tried to make her do a wacky pose in that position, but obviously, my mother-in-law can't do a pose in that state. She was murmuring something under her breath, so I let go of her and then...
Unbelievable. How dare you do that to me? I'm your mother-in-law. I am ashamed to have an extended family like you. You should observe proper manners. Humph! You really are brother and sister. I see that since your brother looks hideous, your heart has become hideous too.
How dare she say that? That's my line. I was about to talk back to her, but that's when my father-in-law walked into the room.
I heard yelling, so I came here. What in the world are you doing? Why are you yelling so loudly? I can hear you from my room. The neighbors can probably hear you too.
My father-in-law looked at my mother-in-law suspiciously. Then, my mother-in-law told my father-in-law pessimistically about what I did to her. My husband was angry about that. My brother and his fiancée were on the edge of their seats, staring at the chaos unfolding before their eyes.
Go look at the mirror. You're the one who has the most hideous face.
What did you just say about my face?
My mother-in-law touched her face repeatedly. My mother-in-law might already be old now, but when she was young, everyone told her she was beautiful. So she still applies makeup to this day, and she does look beautiful. Only physically, though. That is why my mother-in-law was very confident when it came to her appearance. However, when her husband told her that she looked hideous, her face twitched and contorted.
What part of me are you saying is hideous?
I told you. Look at your face in the mirror. Look at how hideous you look. Laughing at a birthmark and speaking abusively. I agree. Her face does look hideous.
Did you just say I'm ugly? My face is hideous? No way.
Need I remind you, Stephanie and our son agreed to live together with us for our sake. So of course, it's just normal and expected that her brother will come to visit. But what's with that attitude you're showing? You forgot to be grateful for the favor that our son and his wife did for us. And you just went ahead and bullied Stephanie's brother. The ugliness of your rotten heart is showing on your face. Your face is so hideous that I can't even look at it. Get out of this room now!
You don't have to tell me again and again. I'm going out the door now. Humph!
My mother-in-law stormed her way out the door, with her face flushed red because she felt embarrassed by how her husband described her. I guess my father-in-law is not wrong about how he described my mother-in-law. I don't think I can say that someone is beautiful if they speak ill of others. I believe that beauty comes from within, and no matter how much makeup you apply, no matter how many layers of foundations you dab into your skin, or how thick your lashes are, or how many coats of mascara you apply, or how voluminous and luscious your lips are, or how perfectly you shape your eyebrows and how they look sleek, you will never look beautiful if you have an evil heart rotten to the core. To be honest, she did look like a dark witch with a heart of ice, compared to other women of her age. I do think that she's beautiful, but since she pays too much attention to her looks, I feel pained. Maybe that's why I felt that way. After my mother-in-law walked out of the room, my father-in-law apologized to us on behalf of his wife.
I apologize for my wife's behavior earlier. Your younger brother and his partner carved out their time to come here. But that was how you were welcomed? I'm truly sorry for what happened.
Father-in-law, you don't need to apologize. I'm sorry I suddenly felt very angry and burst out.
No, don't feel bad. It's just a natural reaction. It's just normal for anyone to get angry when someone talks bad about their precious sibling. I will make sure that my wife doesn't come back to this room today and bother you, so please, feel at home and continue what you were discussing about. By the way, happy wedding! I hope you live a long and happy life together.
My younger brother and his fiancée thanked my father-in-law and bowed their heads slightly. After that, thanks to how my father-in-law rescued us from my mother-in-law, my husband and I were able to bless their wedding after we talked a little more. My younger brother and his fiancée said goodbye and left. However, I couldn't bring myself to forgive my mother-in-law for what she did today. So my husband and I discussed it, and we went back to tell my father-in-law to stop living together.
Of course I agree with that. I apologize for being the reason why we ended up having to live together. And you have to deal with my difficult wife every day. I apologize from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. I'm healthy now, so there's no need to worry anymore.
My father-in-law said his gratitude towards us, and then he agreed to stop living together with us. He then handed us an envelope filled with cash, saying that it was not much. He said that it was for taking care of him and his wife for all these years. So my husband and I used that money to move into a new place. And by the way, after that, Since my mother-in-law was very shocked when her husband told her that she was ugly, the confidence that she used to have is gone now. Because of that, she now can't force herself to go out for fear of being seen. Even when my husband and I went to their house to visit, based on her perspective, we looked like we were laughing at her face. Because of that, she became a shut-in. My father-in-law told us that was just a result of his wife's behavior, so we should just let her be and not be too worried about her. Well, that's what we thought of doing too. But my mother-in-law, who used to make fun of other people's appearance, is now suffering because of the same thing done to her. What comes around, goes around indeed. My name is Michaela. I live together with my husband Caleb, and I work at the hospital as a doctor. My husband understands that I am very busy at work every day, so he helps with the household chores from cooking, cleaning, laundry, and more. Caleb is a very kind and caring man. The reason why I can continue working as a doctor, even after getting married and becoming a wife, is also thanks to the help of my loving husband. I am grateful to Caleb every day, but there was one thing that bothered me a lot. What's bothering me is the presence of my mother-in-law. Caleb and I are living near my parents-in-law's house, but every time Caleb and I go to visit my parents-in-law, my mother-in-law is always sarcastic to me, so I always keep in mind to not go close to her. One day, when Caleb and I went to his parents' house, we passed by our neighbor's house and greeted the neighbor. But, to our surprise, the neighbor said a shocking thing.
Hey, Caleb, I heard you're brainwashed. Are you all right now? I feel sorry for you. What a horrible wife you have.
Huh? Brainwashed? What do you mean?
Your mother is very worried about you. I won't criticize you for your decisions, but you should probably go back to your parents.
What?
When Caleb asked the neighbor for further explanation, that's when my husband found out that his mother gossiped with the neighbors.
That crazy woman brainwashed my precious son. She confines him and never even allows us to see him.
My mother-in-law's absurd claims were brought to light. My husband was furious when he heard that, so he scolded his mother the moment we arrived at their house. However, my mother-in-law confidently responded.
It's the truth!
She claimed that it was true, so the conversation went nowhere. According to my mother-in-law's side of the story, she claims that the reason why her son doesn't visit her as much, now that he is married and living together with me, is because I told my husband bad things about my mother-in-law. It was all just her imagination, but she believed that to be true. However, my husband has been very busy even before we got married, so he hasn't visited his mother that much even then. So my husband said that he doesn't understand at all why his mother said that. The two remained in disagreement with the other and naturally drifted apart. When I stopped seeing my mother-in-law, who had nothing but bad things to say to me, that's when my stress level slowly went down. However, since I'm married to my husband, and she is his mother, we will probably meet again at some point. When I thought that, I had started feeling melancholic. A year and a half after I stopped visiting my mother-in-law, on a very peaceful morning, I received a call from my mother-in-law without any notice. Bracing myself for what was to come, I answered the phone. In a deliberately panicked tone, my mother-in-law immediately told me the reason why she called. Hello?
Hello? Michaela?
Is there a problem? You sound like you're in a hurry.
It's an emergency. My husband fell and so he needs surgery. I'm at the hospital right now, but I was told that I need a deposit as security money.
It's unheard of for a hospital to demand a deposit as security money, so I knew right away that my mother-in-law was lying to me. That is why I decided to press record on my phone and record our conversation. My mother-in-law did a similar thing to me before, tricking me by lying to me. We ended up arguing about who said what in false accusations. I was determined to not fall into the same trap again, so I decided to record our conversation on the phone. I then acted like a very good wife.
I don't know what the symptoms or the actual condition is, but all I know is that he is in bad condition right now, and it's an emergency. Things are very hectic here right now, so you don't have to come to this hospital right now. Also, I won't tell you the name of the hospital. However, I need a $50,000 as a deposit for security money so that my husband can be hospitalized.
A hospital demanding such a high amount of money as a security deposit? Sounds like a very suspicious hospital to me. If my father-in-law received surgery in that suspicious hospital, there's a high possibility that he won't be treated properly. He'll be in danger instead. Is he at the hospital right now?
That's right, but I don't know which hospital he's in because he was brought there in an ambulance. More importantly, you will transfer the money to my account, right?
If you don't know which hospital he's in, I will search it up, so please, don't worry. I'll be there as soon as possible.
I told you, you don't need to come here.
I can't just not go there, because it's outrageous to demand $50,000 from a patient as a deposit.
You are really very stubborn. Just shut up and do what I tell you to do.
Mother-in-law, please, calm down. I will prepare immediately and arrive there in a jiffy, so please, just wait for me there, okay? I told her that and then hung up the phone and turned off the recording. After that, my mother-in-law kept on calling me, but I ignored all her calls and I immediately reported to my husband the conversation I had with my mother-in-law. My husband responded with a suggestion to expose his mother's true colors in front of all of their close relatives. So my husband immediately called all their close relatives and he invited them to his parents' house. So I decided to take the recording with me and headed to my in-laws' house. When I arrived at my in-laws' house, I heard my mother-in-law's loud voice booming throughout the room.
It is all just a performance of my daughter-in-law. I can't believe how stupid she is. I'm having a difficult time because my Michaela brainwashed our son. She really is a very bad wife. I don't know why he married her.
But why in the world did Michaela lie that I was brought to the hospital?
I have no idea how stupid people's brains work. Ask her. I have no idea why she invited all our close relatives here.
When I opened the door to the living room, I made an exaggerated expression, feigning shock, and said, "Father-in-law, are you all right now?" I acted like I was very concerned about him, even though I know that what my mother-in-law told me about my father-in-law brought to the hospital in an ambulance was just a big fat lie.
You're finally here, you stupid liar.
We don't need you acting like you're concerned. Get out of here. You're just causing trouble.
How dare you unashamedly lie that my husband is sick and in the hospital? Caleb, you should divorce that stupid woman immediately.
Mom, please, calm down for a moment.
My husband looked at me and signaled to me, so I nodded to him and took my phone out of my pocket. But isn't it strange? I thought that there might be some misunderstandings and mishearing things, so I recorded our conversation on the phone to be sure. I tried to listen to the recording again and again, with hopes to find hints on which hospital my father-in-law is at. But I wonder which part I misunderstood. Everyone, if you could please help me figure it out by carefully listening to this recording together with me. After saying that, I then pressed the recording on. Not a second later, the conversation I had with my mother-in-law was revealed. The volume was quite high, so her voice boomed across the room.
What's the meaning of this? You're the liar after all! Were you trying to trick your daughter-in-law? How could you do this?
Everyone's attitude changed the moment they heard that recording. As a result, they all became angry at my mother-in-law. When my father-in-law and the relatives heaped abuse upon my mother-in-law instead of apologizing to me, she was furious.
What? Why are you on her side? You should be on my side.
You expect us to be on the side of someone who tried to steal money? I never knew that you were that ill-natured! We will not get involved in whatever you do anymore!
Please, don't make it sound so bad. Why did you even record our conversation in the first place? You bastard! The reason why you gathered everyone here today is only to make them listen to that recording?
I'm the one who gathered our relatives here today, because I wanted to reveal your true colors to them.
What? How deeply have you been brainwashed by your wife that you would go so far to say that and actually do it?
Shut up! Get a hold of yourself! Don't embarrass us any more than you already have!
You're just a wife. How dare you trick me like this? I will never forgive you. Ever.
After that, the preaching by my father-in-law and relatives toward my mother-in-law continued. My husband and I ignored them and walked away out of the house. They're adults. They can handle the situation themselves. We've done our part after all. After Caleb and I arrived at our safe and comfortable home, we celebrated for successfully repelling her and gaining our family and relatives' trust. Cheers!
Oh my goodness! Did you see the look on Mom's face? She was so flustered!
You're right.
Michaela, you don't need to get involved with my mother anymore, honey. Let's spend the new year just the two of us, instead of going to visit my parents like we always do. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
No, you don't have to be sorry, honey. It's not your fault. Thank you for always being by my side and choosing to believe me. After that, I never met my mother-in-law again, aside from during important ceremonial occasions in the family. Then after that, my father-in-law contacted my husband, Caleb, and told me that his father wanted to apologize to me again. According to him, my mother-in-law planned on stealing money from us and used the money here and there thinking she'd be able to afford to pay. However, since she wasn't able to steal money from us, she ended up filing for bankruptcy. As for her methods of spending money, she went on luxury vacations and expensive restaurants. It was all just to feed her wants. My father-in-law found out that my mother-in-law had a debt of $20,000 for all those excessive expensive spendings. My father-in-law finally thought that he couldn't live with my mother-in-law anymore if she keeps on acting irresponsibly. He eventually ended up kicking her out of the house. Without any place to go and no one to help her, my mother-in-law ended up adrift in the streets. According to rumors, the bill collectors are after her. So she moves from one place to another and she lives away from attention to hide herself to avoid getting caught. After my mother-in-law got kicked out, I received a single very long message from her. In that message, she wrote all the resentment she has towards me. Before I could finish reading the entire message, I blocked her number and then deleted it. After that, I never received a call or message from her ever again. My mother-in-law is now very old and she's just getting older. The rest of her life is hopeless, but that is just a result of her own actions. So I don't feel sorry for her at all. She deserves it after all. My husband and I then vowed to never get involved with her ever again.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.